Okay, today we're going to make a journal in a slipcase. It'll be much like this one, which is one I made previously. Inside the case is this embossed cover journal. It's got the same logo on the back and the front, and it's a real book and bound in a traditional manner, not loose like a lot of the journals that you see where people Coptic stitch together. And I'll show you how to do that over the course of these videos.
Alright, we're going to start with regular 8.5 by 11 paper. It's good acid-free paper, you want to make sure of that. And this book that we're making today is going to be half of one sheet. So the first thing it's important you need to do is figure out which direction the grain of the paper goes. You can do that by kind of bending it over and feeling which way it's more springy. The grain of the paper in this case runs parallel with the longest side. So the fold and the spine of the book needs to be with the grain of the paper, parallel to the grain of the paper. Each one of these sheets is going to be half of 8.5 by 11, which means 5.5 by 4 1/4. So we would just go through the process of cutting these out, and then that's the size, the final size of the journal. Alright, every 4 sheets will be one signature of the book. So you get your 4 sheets cut, put them together, bring the edges together, line it up very carefully, and fold it there in the middle. That will be the spine of the book. Use your bone folder to reinforce that fold, give it a little extra, and move on to the next. This book we have will be 20 of these signatures. Now it's not enough just to fold these over and reinforce them and hope for the best, because the book won't be tight, the binding won't be tight enough, there'll be a gap there that's too springy. Now I don't have a book press, but what I do have are a bunch of wood clamps and wood from my woodworking. So I have clamped the book together between these two boards, and it's important to let it sit there clamped for days, as long as you can possibly do it, over the weekend, entire week. As long as the longer the better, and you'll have a very tight, the folds will get very tight, and there won't be any gaps between in the middle of the signature. After your pages have been pressed for many days, it's time to take them out of your setup. If you have a book press, great. If you have to improvise like I do, that'll work too. This works just fine. And you can see just how tight these folds are. Use a spare piece of paper on each side just to protect the pages from not getting anything from the boards on them. And here we go. This is what it looks like. Completely flat, tight bends on those signatures. And this is going to be a nice tight binding of a book, something that's missing on a lot of those journals that people make in the Coptic stitch, where they're very, very loosely folded. It's an important step, and I can't emphasize this enough. Alright, we'll be binding this book together with this linen tapes, and we're going to have 3 of them on the binding. So the way you start is you measure a 1/2 inch from either end, make a mark a 1/2 inch from either end on your piece of paper, then use your dividers to divide up that space into 4 equal segments. And when you do that, you'll come up with something like this, which will be your template for the book. And I've got it folded. It's exactly the size of the piece of the signature of the book. It's got the lines on it on both sides, because that will come in handy later on, and we'll see that. And these tapes will go in those spaces between the cuts that we'll make inside of on each signature. Now I do have one proper piece of bookbinding equipment, this clamp here that I got locally on Craigslist for 25 bucks, which is quite a score. And what I've done is I've put the pages, that's the spine side out, between two book boards. Got them nice and square. And then put that down into the clamp until it hits the table. I've got the clamp up on a couple of spacers so the book will actually sit up higher, and I'm going to need to, this isn't coming out right. Make sure I get it completely square. Very important at this stage. Okay, put this as a spacer, put it back under there, and tighten these down. Alright, now I've got it flipped over, and we're going to transfer those marks from where the tapes are going to go and where the other cuts are going to go onto the book. So I've got this, I've got it marked head, and the head is on the left here. That's the side that's nice and even and flat. The bottom side might not be, depending on how well you cut your paper. So we're always going to line up exactly with that head and then ignore whatever happens down at the foot. So what we're going to do is just mark a little mark on each cut, somewhere in the middle. And this is where the thread's going to go through. Alright, to transfer those lines all the way across, I'm going to put a ruler back here to get it nice and square with the book, and then draw a pencil mark right where I made those small references. Each one of these will be a saw mark through the signatures, and this thread will be threaded through there. Let's turn this over, make sure it's nice and square. And there you have it. Okay, I have here a Japanese cutoff saw. It's extremely thin, and it'll cut a slot in this book that's as narrow as a razor blade. The way I get it started off is just put my fingers next to it, sight along that pencil mark that I made, and make a very light first cut, and then cuts on the pull stroke. So after it's established, it'll guide itself. And that's probably enough. You don't need it too deep. Just so it gets through that fourth piece of paper, and then there's still a hole on the inside of the signature. Now if you don't have a saw like this, you can use a utility knife or a razor blade, and it's just a little bit harder to cut through. And so I'm going to go through and cut all those, and then we'll go on to the next step.